Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into the core structures the Army uses for decision-making, command, and control during complex operations. If you've ever wondered how huge organizations take broad strategy and turn it into, well, actual coordinated action, you're in the right place. Our main sources today are Army Doctrine Publication 5.0, The Operations Process, and Field Manual 5.0, Planning and Orders Production. We're sticking close to the doctrine, our mission. Not just to list definitions, but to pull out the really crucial ideas about how the Army tackles complexity, risk, chaos, all that stuff. We'll go from the big picture philosophy down to the nitty-gritty methods. And the whole system we're exploring, planning, preparing, executing, assessing it all really spins around one central idea.
Absolutely. And that idea, that philosophy, is mission command. It's the bedrock. When you look at these publications, Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 and Field Manual 5.0, you're seeing the guidelines for imposing order on, well, frankly, chaotic and dangerous situations. It's not just what to do, but it really dictates how leaders should think, how they decide, and critically, how they empower the people working for them. It's really the essential starting point for all of this.
Okay, so let's build that foundation then.
Yeah.
The operations process is the main framework for command and control. You mentioned 4 activities.
That's right. Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 lays it out. Planning, preparing, executing, and continuously assessing the operation. These are the big 4. But, and this is really important, Field Manual 5.0 stresses they aren't neat, separate boxes you just tick off. They overlap, they recur, things change.
They're not like step 1, step 2, step 3.
Okay.
Done.
Exactly not. Think of it more like a continuous cycle, maybe a flywheel. Planning is heavy up front, obviously, but it doesn't just stop when the order is written. You're still planning, refining during preparation, and you're definitely planning during execution as reality hits you. And assessment, that's not the last step either. It happens all the time. It informs everything else. Without constantly assessing, how do you know what needs changing in the plan, or how to prepare better, or when you need to adjust during execution? You don't.
That continuous adaptation idea loops right back to mission command, doesn't it? If everything's always changing and plans need constant updating, commanders can't micromanage. They have to delegate. But how does the doctrine stop that delegation from just becoming, well, chaos?
Through discipline and trust. It's built on the 7 principles of mission command, which Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 references. They provide the structure for that trust. First, competence. This one's foundational. Your subordinates have to know their jobs, technically and tactically. If they don't, you can't really trust them with freedom of action.
Makes sense.
Second, shared understanding. Everyone involved, up and down the chain, needs to see the situation, the mission, the plan, in basically the same way. If the commander sees danger ahead, but the platoon leader sees an opportunity and they don't share that understanding, well, you're going to have problems. Coordinated action becomes impossible.
Right. Disastrous, potentially.
Third, mutual trust. This is huge, especially when comms go down or things get really intense. The commander has to trust the subordinate will do the right thing, aligned with the overall goal. And the subordinate needs to trust the commander's vision and intent.
Okay, competence, shared understanding, trust. What tools actually help build that? How do you make it happen?
That brings us to the next few principles. Number 4 is the commander's intent. This is absolutely critical. It's a clear, short statement explaining the operation's purpose and what success looks like, the desired end state. It's probably the single most important piece of mission command because when the plan inevitably breaks down or unexpected things happen, subordinates use the intent to guide their actions. What would the boss want me to do now?
Got it. It's the guiding star when the map disappears.
Precisely. 5th is mission orders. These tell subordinates what result needs to be achieved and why, but not how to do every little thing. They give maximum freedom for initiative. Then number 6, which can be tricky, is disciplined initiative. This means subordinates are expected to act proactively, seize opportunities, or adjust to problems without waiting for orders if the current orders don't fit anymore or there are no orders.
But disciplined.
How? Discipline because it has to be within the commander's intent. It's not just doing whatever you want. It's initiative guided by training, competence, and that shared understanding of the overall goal. It prevents random actions.
Okay, so initiative, but tethered to the purpose.
Exactly. And finally, 7th, risk acceptance. Commanders have to accept that military operations involve risk. They need to take calculated risks to achieve objectives, and that acceptance has to flow down. Subordinates exercising disciplined initiative are also taking risks, and that needs to be understood and accepted, within limits, of course.
That framework makes sense. Trust built on competence, guided by intent, allowing for initiative within bounds. But you mentioned operations are dynamic, chaotic even. What are the specific forces the doctrine says are constantly working against this order?
Oh, Field Manual 50 is very clear on this. It recognizes that war is fundamentally a human clash, and that breeds uncertainty. Beyond just the complexity of managing troops and tech, there are two big timeless spoilers: chance and fiction.
Chance and friction. Yeah.
Chance is basically, well, luck, good or bad. Unexpected stuff happens that's outside anyone's control. A sudden freak storm, a key enemy leader dying unexpectedly, a political decision halfway around the world changing the strategic context overnight. It's pure unpredictability.
Randomness.
Right. Friction, though. Friction is maybe even more pervasive. Field Manual 50 describes it as all the little things, and sometimes big things, that make even simple tasks incredibly difficult in war. It's the radio that doesn't work when you need it most. It's the vehicle breaking down. It's maps being wrong. It's exhaustion, fear, misunderstandings between units. Just the inherent difficulty of getting organizations to work under extreme stress.
And the doctrine says this affects everyone.
Yes, crucially, Field Manual 50 notes friction is present for all sides. So a good plan isn't about eliminating friction, you can't. It's about anticipating it, building resilience to it, having workarounds, knowing things will go wrong.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The difference between the science and the art of planning. If chaos and friction are baked in, planning can't just be math problems.
Absolutely not. And Army Doctrine Publication 50 draws a clear line here. The science of planning covers the quantifiable stuff, things you can calculate: movement rates, fuel needs, ammunition consumption, weapon effects ranges, logistics tables. This is stuff you learn through formal training, doctrine, technical manuals.
Numbers part.
Right. The art of planning, though, that's different. That's where judgment comes in. It's about choosing the right tactics for the specific situation, arranging forces and activities in time and space creatively, combining different capabilities effectively. Army Doctrine Publication 50 says this comes from experience, from study, imagination, critical thinking. It's understanding the human dimension, the enemy's likely reactions, the terrain's subtle effects, the psychological impact. It's about deciding how much risk is acceptable here, now. You can't get that from a spreadsheet alone.
And for the commander to apply that art, they need a clear picture in their head first, right? That commander's visualization concept. How does the doctrine describe that mental process?
It's central to the commander's role. The commander's job isn't to make every tiny decision. It's to provide vision and direction. To do that effectively, Army Doctrine Publication 50 emphasizes they have to work closely with their staff, with partner forces, anyone involved, to build a truly shared understanding of the whole situation. This understanding comes from analyzing everything: the big picture, political, military, economic factors, but also the specifics: the mission, the enemy, the terrain, weather, time available, civilian population, information environment. All those variables.
Soaking it all in.
Yes. And then synthesizing it. That leads to commander's visualization. It's the mental process where the commander gets that deep situational understanding, figures out the desired end state, what success looks like, and, crucially, envisions the overall approach. How will the force, broadly speaking, get from here to there? Once they have that visualization, they describe it clearly, maybe using words, maybe a sketch or diagram, but they communicate it so the staff and subordinates understand the concept and can start developing detailed plans based on it. It's the bridge from abstract intent to concrete action planning.
Okay, so visualization is the commander's mental model.
Yeah.
Then operational art seems like the toolkit, the concepts they use to build that bridge, linking the big strategic goals down to what actually happens on the ground.
That's a great way to put it. Field Manual 50 defines operational art as exactly that cognitive approach. It's how commanders and staffs think about connecting the ends, the objectives they need to achieve, with the ways, the methods or concepts they'll use, and the means, the resources, the troops, the supplies they have available. And critically, integrating risk assessment into that whole equation. It operates across what the doctrine calls the levels of warfare, ensuring tactical actions contribute to the bigger picture.
These levels of warfare, they seem important for context. Can you walk us through them quickly? How do they shape planning?
Sure. The doctrine usually talks about 4 conceptual levels. They're not always tied to specific unit sizes, more to the scope of thinking and planning. At the top, you have the national strategic level. This is the government level setting national policy, deciding why the military might be used, developing things like the national security strategy, big picture stuff.
Grand strategy.
Right. Then there's the theater strategic level. This is usually managed by a geographic combatant command. They're concerned with a whole region, developing long-term campaign plans, positioning forces, linking military activity to other instruments of national power over time within that theater. Next down is the operational level. This is the crucial link. It's where theater strategy gets translated into specific campaigns and major operations. Planners at this level design how a series of battles and engagements will achieve the theater's strategic goals. Army Doctrine Publication 5 mentions campaign plans as a key output here.
Bridge level.
Exactly. And finally, the tactical level. This is where the fighting happens, planning and executing individual battles, engagements, specific actions. Tactics are about employing forces skillfully in relation to each other and the enemy, but effective tactics need to serve the operational goals, which in turn serve the strategic ones. Operational art ties it all together.
Okay, so once a commander is thinking at the right level, using operational art, what are the specific tools or concepts they're working with? What are the building blocks from Army Doctrine Publication 5.0?
Chapter 2 of Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 lays out several key elements for operational design. First and foremost is the end state and conditions. You have to know where you're going. The end state isn't just enemy defeated, it's the set of conditions you want to exist when the operation is over.
Conditions like
The desired political situation, the security environment, the state of essential services, the relationship between different groups on the ground. Defining these conditions clearly is vital for unity of effort, especially when working with civilian agencies or international partners. It tells everyone what success actually means beyond just the fighting.
That makes sense. What's next?
Next are decisive points. Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 defines these as specific places, events, critical factors, even enemy capabilities that give you a marked advantage if you can seize, control, or influence them. Identifying decisive points is critical because, as the doctrine says, they then become objectives. They're the keys to unlocking the path to the end state. Focusing effort on decisive points avoids wasting resources on less important tasks.
Finding the enemy's center of gravity or the key terrain, that sort of thing.
It can be, but it's broader too. It could be a key node in their command system or maybe even influencing a particular leader or population group. It depends on the situation.
That leads to another point. Objectives aren't always physical things you capture, right? Especially in, say, stability operations. How does the doctrine handle that mix of physical and conceptual goals?
It uses two related concepts: lines of operations and lines of effort. Field Manual 5.0 explains this distinction, and it's a pretty powerful tool. A line of operation is typically geographic. It connects your force from its base to a physical objective. Think of an arrow on a map showing the main axis of advance for an armored division towards a city. It defines direction in space and time.
Okay, physical path.
Right. A line of effort, on the other hand, links tasks to conceptual objectives. It's about achieving a desired effect or state, often involving non-military actions. Examples might be improve governance, establish rule of law, or restore essential services. You can't draw a neat arrow for those on a map.
I see. So you might have a physical push alongside efforts to build local capacity.
Exactly. Commanders often use both in parallel. A line of operation might focus on securing a region physically, while lines of effort focus on stabilizing it through governance, economic development, information campaigns, etc. It helps visualize how all the different activities contribute to the overall end state. Then there's tempo, the speed and rhythm of operations. Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 highlights this is a constant trade-off.
Fast versus thorough.
Essentially, yes. Do you act quickly to exploit an opportunity or maintain shock, even if preparations aren't perfect? Or do you take more time to synchronize everything, reduce risk, ensure logistics are solid, but maybe give the enemy time to recover or react? The chosen tempo has huge implications for risk and how fast you need to plan and decide.
Okay, end state. Decisive points, lines, tempo. Once that design starts taking shape, the commander needs ways to describe how they'll achieve effects. That's where these defeat and stability mechanisms come in.
Precisely. These are verbs, action words, described in both Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 and Field Manual 5.0 that give planners a common language for the effects they want to create against the enemy or within the environment. The idea is to combine them for complementary results. You have 4 defeat mechanisms, primarily focused on dismantling the enemy's ability to fight. Destroy. That's applying lethal force to make an enemy capability unusable. Blowing up a bridge, taking out an artillery unit. Dislocate, using maneuver or positioning to make the enemy's current position untenable, forcing them to move or rendering their plan irrelevant, like getting behind them. Disintegrate. This aims at the enemy's command and control or logistics, breaking their cohesion so the different parts can't work together effectively. Isolate. Cutting an enemy force off from support, reinforcements, or even their leadership, physically or psychologically.
Okay, those are pretty clear, aimed at breaking the enemy force. What about the stability side?
For more complex environments, maybe counterinsurgency or stabilization, there are four stability mechanisms. Compel, using force or the credible threat of force to establish control or change behavior. Think setting up checkpoints or enforcing a curfew. Control. This is about imposing civil order, often working with local authorities. Maintaining security, ensuring essential services function. Influence. This is the soft power piece. Using information, presence, actions, key leader engagements to change perceptions, attitudes, or behaviors in the population or specific groups. Support. Helping other actors like local government, NGOs, other agencies to do their jobs effectively. Providing security for aid distribution, for example. Using military capabilities to enable broader progress.
That gives a really robust set of concepts for designing the operation. Now let's shift gears to the science part you mentioned earlier, the actual structured processes for planning. The big one seems to be the military decision-making process.
It is. The military decision-making process, or MDMP as it's often called, even though we're saying the full name here, is the Army's core iterative planning methodology for units with staffs. Field Manual 5.0 dedicates a whole chapter to it. Its purpose is to help the commander and staff analyze a mission, develop several potential ways to accomplish it, courses of action, compare those options, and then produce a detailed operation play or order. It's designed to bring structure and analytical rigor to complex problems.
7 steps, right? Can you walk us through what happens in each one, maybe hitting the highlights? What's the goal of each step?
Sure. It is 7 steps, and they flow logically, though there's feedback and iteration. Step 1, receipt of mission. Pretty straightforward. You get the order or guidance from higher headquarters. This kicks off the whole process. The commander gives initial guidance and, crucially, issues the first warning order to subordinates so they can start their planning too. That's parallel planning.
Get everyone moving.
Exactly. Step 2, mission analysis. This is huge. The staff dives deep. What exactly are we being asked to do? What are the stated tasks, specified tasks? What other tasks need doing even if they weren't explicitly mentioned, implied tasks? And most importantly, what are the absolutely critical tasks we must accomplish to succeed, essential tasks? This step produces a clear, approved mission statement for the unit.
Nailing down the what's and why.
Precisely. Step 3, course of action development. Here, the staff brainstorms different ways to achieve the mission. They need to develop several options, courses of action, or COAs that are feasible. Can we do it? Acceptable? Is the risk okay? Suitable? Does it accomplish the mission? And distinguishable? Is it truly different from the other options? Each COA needs a narrative description and usually a sketch showing the concept.
Creating options.
Right. Step 4, course of action analysis. This is often called wargaming. It's a critical thinking exercise where the staff mentally fights the plan. They visualize how the operation might unfold for each COA, considering enemy reactions, friendly actions, sequence of events. It helps identify strengths, weaknesses, potential problems, and needed resources for each option.
Testing the plans against reality, virtually.
In a way, yes. Step 5, course of action comparison. Now, the staff takes the results from the wargaming and compares the COAs against evaluation criteria set by the commander, things like speed, risk level, resource efficiency, simplicity, how well it achieves the intent. Often they use a decision matrix to lay out the pros and cons objectively.
Making the choice easier for the boss.
That's the idea. Step 6, course of action approval. The staff presents their analysis and comparison. The commander considers it, applies their own judgment and visualization, and then selects the COA they believe is best, or sometimes modifies one, or even combines elements of different ones. And finally, step 7, orders production, dissemination, and transition. The chosen COA is turned into a formal operation plan or order with all the necessary details, annexes, graphics. It's then distributed to subordinate units, and importantly, there's a transition to the folks who will monitor the execution, usually the current operations cell.
That sounds incredibly thorough, almost time-consuming. If the staff spends ages wargaming and comparing, what about the units down the line who actually have to get ready and execute?
That is a major, major consideration. And Field Manual 5.0 explicitly addresses it with the rule of time allocation. It's often called the 1/3, 2/3 rule. The higher headquarters should use no more than 1/3 of the available time for their planning, leaving a minimum of 2/3 for subordinate units to do their planning and preparation.
So the higher HQ can't hog all the planning time.
They absolutely shouldn't. Violating this rule puts immense pressure on subordinates, forces them to rush, increases risk, and undermines the whole process. It emphasizes why getting those initial warning orders out fast is so critical for enabling parallel planning down the chain.
Okay, that's a good check built in. Now, the doctrine itself flags some common problems or pitfalls with using the military decision-making process. What are the traps people fall into?
Yes, Field Manual 5.0 is pretty self-aware about this. There are a few key dangers. First, lack of commander involvement. If the commander just delegates the planning entirely and doesn't stay engaged, driving the process with their intent and visualization, the staff might produce a technically sound plan, but it won't really be the commander's plan. It might lack that crucial insight or risk tolerance. The commander has to be central.
Can't be hands-off.
No. Second, there's the danger of making the process too rigid. Field Manual 5.0 warns against institutionalizing planning methods to the point where following the steps perfectly becomes more important than producing a timely, effective plan. Staffs can get bogged down in creating overly detailed plans, chasing perfection, and end up delivering them too late to be usable.
Process over product.
Exactly. And the third pitfall, maybe the most critical during the fight, is treating the plan like a script. Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 emphasizes this. You have to remember that no plan survives contact with the enemy, or even just contact with reality. Friction and chance guarantee that. If leaders become fixated on executing the plan exactly as written, instead of adapting based on the actual situation while staying within the commander's intent, they're setting themselves up for failure. The plan is a starting point, a guide, not a screenplay.
That adaptability piece is huge. So when the plan does inevitably need changing during execution, what's the mechanism for that? That's where the rapid decision-making process comes in.
Right. The Rapid Decision-Making and Synchronization Process, or RDSP, this is the tool used typically by the current operations folks, the ones monitoring the fight in real time. The key difference, as Field Manual 5.0 points out, is its goal. The military decision-making process aims for the optimal solution through detailed analysis and comparison. The rapid decision-making and synchronization process aims for a timely and effective solution that works right now and stays within the commander's original intent. Speed is critical.
So a lot about finding the absolute best answer, more about finding a good enough answer quickly.
Pretty much. It usually gets triggered when someone identifies a variance, a significant difference between what's actually happening and what the plan predicted. This could be a new threat popping up or maybe an unexpected opportunity. The steps are much faster. Quickly compare the current situation to the order, confirm a variance exists, develop a course of action to address it. Often this is a very quick mental war game by the commander and key staff. Refine it slightly and then immediately issue the updated instructions, usually as a fragmentary order or fraggo. It's built for speed while maintaining coherence with the overall plan.
Okay, so we have the big deliberate process for staffs and a faster adaptation process for execution. What about the small units, companies, platoons, squads that don't have large staffs? How do they plan?
That's where troop leading procedures, or TLPs, come in. Field Manual 5.0 describes these as the planning and preparation process for small unit leaders company level and below who lack dedicated staff sections. It's an 8-step process, but it's much more dynamic and leader-centric than the military decision-making process. The steps are guidelines, not rigid requirements. And the leader does much of the analysis themselves, filtering information through the lens of the mission variables. METTC is the common way to remember them. Mission, enemy, terrain weather, troop support available, time available, and civil considerations. Plus information considerations now too.
So the leader is the primary planner.
Yes. They receive the mission, issue an initial warning order, this is absolutely crucial, make a tentative plan, start necessary movement, conduct reconnaissance, complete the plan, issue the final order, and then supervise rehearsals and inspections.
You emphasize the warning order there. Why is that so vital in troop leading procedures?
Because time is usually extremely limited at the small unit level. Field Manual 5.0 highlights that issuing the initial warning order as quickly as possible is perhaps the most important step. The leader gives subordinates the essential information available right away. Here's the mission, here's roughly what we'll be doing, start getting ready. This allows subordinates to begin their own concurrent preparations immediately, maximizing the limited time available. You don't wait for a perfect plan, you get the warning out fast.
Makes sense. Get the ball rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
Okay, so the plan's made, whether through the big process or the small unit one. Now the focus shifts to getting ready preparation.
Exactly. Preparation covers everything units do to improve their ability to execute the plan. Army Doctrine Publication 50 lists things like rehearsals, moving to assembly areas or attack positions, conducting specific training needed for the mission, inspecting equipment, coordinating logistics. It's about turning the plan on paper into actual readiness.
And there's a specific check involved here too, right? A confirmation brief.
Yes, the confirmation brief. This isn't just good practice. Army Doctrine Publication 50 describes it as a required brief subordinate leaders give back to the commander immediately after receiving the operation order. It's usually very short. The subordinate confirms they understand the commander's intent, their own specific tasks, and how their mission fits in with the units around them. It's a quick check to catch any major misunderstandings right at the start, before they lead to problems during execution. It's a critical feedback loop.
Good way to ensure everyone heard the same thing. I recall the doctrine also mentioning a specific danger during this preparation phase.
It does. Army Doctrine Publication 50 points out that forces are often quite vulnerable during preparation. Units might be concentrating, moving, maybe not fully deployed for security. This can make them susceptible to enemy reconnaissance or even surprise attack. So, maintaining robust security operations, things like screens, guards, local security patrols, is absolutely vital during preparation to protect the force and ensure the enemy can't disrupt the plan before it even starts.
Okay, so preparation builds readiness. But to execute effectively over time, especially when things change, you need good current information. That brings us to the running estimate.
The running estimate is absolutely fundamental to the whole operations process, especially assessment and ongoing planning. Field Manual 50 defines it as the continuous assessment of the current situation related to a specific functional area like intelligence, logistics, operations, fires, etc. Each staff section maintains one. They constantly update it with current facts, track assumptions, are they still valid, monitor the status of friendly forces and resources, and assess the implications for current and future operations. It answers the question, where do we stand right now regarding X?
So it's like a live dashboard for each part of the operation.
That's a good analogy. Effective running estimates are crucial because they provide the factual basis for the commander's decisions and the staff's recommendations. Without them, you're planning based on old news, which is incredibly dangerous. They feed directly into the overall assessment process.
We'll talk about that assessment process then. How does it fit in overall?
Assessment is constant. Field Manual 50 actually states that assessment precedes and guides all the other activities. You need to know where you are and how things are going before you can plan what to do next, or adjust your preparation, or modify execution. According to Army Doctrine Publication 50, assessment involves 3 core activities. First, monitoring. This is simply watching the situation, collecting information, tracking progress against the plan. Are we hitting the phase lines on time? What's the enemy doing? What are our fuel levels? Second, evaluating. This is where you analyze the information you've gathered. Are we actually achieving the desired effects? Are we accomplishing our tasks? How are we progressing towards the end state conditions we defined way back in planning? This involves comparing what is happening to what we expected or wanted to happen.
Judging progress.
Exactly. And third, based on that evaluation, recommending or directing action. If things are going well, maybe you continue as planned or look for ways to accelerate. If things are going poorly or an unexpected opportunity arises, the staff recommends adjustments or the commander directs changes. This feeds right back into planning, often using the rapid decision-making and synchronization process we talked about.
Okay, but evaluating progress. That sounds like it could be subjective. How do you make that rigorous? How do you measure success?
That's where measures of performance and measures of effectiveness come in. Field Manual 50 makes a really important distinction between these 2 types of indicators. Getting this right is key to good assessment. A measure of performance, or MOP, basically asks, are we doing things right? It measures task accomplishment. Did we complete the task assigned? How well did we do it? It's often quantitative. Examples: number of bridges repaired, percentage of assigned targets destroyed, time taken to seize objective alpha. It measures output or efficiency.
Okay, task completion.
Right. A measure of effectiveness, or MOE, is different. It asks, are we doing the right things? It measures the impact of our actions on the overall system or situation, specifically related to achieving the desired end state conditions. Are our actions actually changing the environment in the way we intended? MOEs often require looking at changes over time and might be harder to quantify directly. Example, an MOP might be number of patrols conducted in Sector Bravo. The corresponding MOE might be decrease in enemy attacks in Sector Bravo over the last 30 days, or increase in local population reporting feeling secure. It measures the outcome or effect, not just the activity itself.
Ah, I see the difference. One measures doing the task, the other measures if the task actually achieved the desired change. That seems much harder to track.
It can be, definitely, but focusing only on measures of performance can lead you to be very busy doing things that aren't actually contributing to the overall goal. You need both to get a complete picture.
The doctrine had a compelling story about this, didn't it? About assessment and commander's judgment in Iraq.
Ah, yes. The vignette in Army Doctrine publication 50, Commander's Assessment, Are We Ready to Close on Baghdad? It's a great illustration of assessment in action, particularly the commander's role. It describes Lieutenant General McKiernan commanding ground forces during the invasion of Iraq in 2003. His forces had advanced rapidly, but he paused and went forward to talk directly with his key subordinate commanders, Generals Conway and Wallace. He didn't just rely on reports. He wanted their personal assessment, their stance, as the doctrine puts it.
Face-to-face evaluations.
Exactly. And they told him they had concerns. Their supply lines were stretched thin, they were still fighting pockets of resistance in their rear areas. Based on their assessments, confirming his own view, General McKiernan made a tough call. He decided not to immediately push for Baghdad, even though the initial timeline might have suggested it. He said, essentially, let's take time to consolidate, secure our rear, get properly set before committing to the final push. Because once they started that, they couldn't easily stop.
So the commander's judgment, informed by direct subordinate input and assessment of risk, overrode a potentially rigid adherence to the initial timeline.
Precisely. It shows the plan is a guide, but the commander's assessment of the actual situation, based on feedback and running estimates, drives the critical decisions, especially at major transition points.
That need for trust, shared understanding, and coordination. It must get incredibly complex when you add other countries into the mix in multinational operations.
Exponentially more complex. Army Doctrine Publication 50 states clearly that we should expect most future operations to be multinational, working within alliances like NATO or ad hoc coalitions. These partnerships bring huge benefits, legitimacy, unique capabilities, shared burdens, but they also bring challenges. Each nation has its own rules, its own political constraints, sometimes called national caveats, limiting what their forces can do.
So you can't just order everyone around like they're part of the same army.
Absolutely not. Field Manual 50 points out that true unity of command, having one single commander in charge of everyone, is often politically impossible in multinational settings. Nations don't readily cede command of their troops, so the goal becomes unity of effort. Commanders have to work constantly through liaison, coordination, negotiation, building consensus, focusing everyone on the commonly agreed objectives and the overall commander's intent, even without a formal command line. It requires immense diplomatic skill alongside military competence.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really deep dive. We've gone from the guiding philosophy of mission command through the structured thinking of operational art, down into the detailed mechanics of the military decision-making process and troop leading procedures, and circled back to the continuous loop of preparation and assessment.
It really paints a picture of how the Army tries to create frameworks for disciplined thought and synchronized action, specifically to cope with the inherent uncertainty, friction, and chaos of conflict. The structure isn't the end goal, it's the tool to enable effective, adaptable action.
So what does this all mean when you boil it all down for the commander or the staff officer trying to apply this?
I think Field Manual 50 sums it up well near the introduction. It says the measure of a good plan isn't whether everything happens exactly as predicted, because it won't. The measure is whether the plan helps the force act effectively despite unforeseen events. So planning isn't about fortune-telling. It's about thinking through possibilities, anticipating contingencies, setting conditions for success, making timely decisions when things change, and ultimately managing risk intelligently.
Which brings us right back to that tension between careful thought and decisive action. There's that famous quote from General George S. Patton, Jr., cited in Army Doctrine Publication 50, quote, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week," end quote. So here's our final thought for you, our listener, to wrestle with. We've discussed these detailed, rigorous planning methods, the 7 steps, the war gaming, the comparison matrices, the constant assessment, all designed to produce the best possible plan. Given Patton's point and the reality of fleeting opportunities and conflict, at what point does that very pursuit of the perfect detailed plan become counterproductive? When does striving for analytical completeness actually hinder the timely, violent execution needed to win? Where exactly is that tipping point between disciplined planning and decisive action?